welcome to another Steel and Whiskey. I'm Michelle McCarthy, and today I have Baily Frick with us, and we are getting together to talk about what it's like to be a woman in construction. So, most importantly, first, Steel and Whiskey, we're having a drink together. Baily, what are you having? What's your drink today?
I'm drinking a Moscow Mule, or as we call it in Montana, a Montana Mule, because it's with huckleberry vodka. So
Ooh,
that's my drink of choice.
huckleberry vodka. Tell me about that.
There's like, I don't know, 1.5 million different brands that do it, but I am cheap. So I like the 360 vodka because it's like,
hmm
I don't know. I have a huge gallon and I think it was like $25 and it lasts me forever.
Well, there you
And
go.
it's super smooth.
Awesome. Well, today I'm going to be drinking whiskey and water, and I just went out and bought this Redbreast Irish whiskey. So I'll be pouring it here.
I
I,
I applaud you for drinking whiskey because it feels like what I would think drinking battery acid would be like. So I'll stick to vodka.
oh, I don't know. I have to say I really enjoy it. I just tried this one this weekend and had to go buy my own bottle to try it out and share it with everybody here because it's super smooth. So,
Have you had the
cheers.
American honey?
No.
That is what my husband's partial to.
Oh,
He says that it's like the smoothest whiskey he's ever had.
all right.
So
Well, now I have next on my list to try.
you're welcome.
All right. So now that we've talked about our whiskey or our huckleberry vodka that I'm going to have to try to find, let's start out with just some introductions. So, Baily, who are you? How did you get here to our Steel and Whiskey podcast?
I'm Baily Frick, if you haven't caught on yet, and I am a modeler detail with KMA Steel. I'm a remote worker, so I'm still stationed in Montana working with them via the cloud. And I got here in kind of a roundabout way. I've been detailing since 2014, right out of college. And finally, last year, my previous employer had decided to take me to Summit, and that was because of David reaching out and being like, you need to talk for us. So then I met you and quite a few other SDS employees, and then was asked again to participate in the podcast. So here we
Awesome.
are.
Yeah. So for me, I've been here with SDS2 for so many years now, and it's been great over the course of my experience here to see so many more women in this industry. And I think when I first started, you only saw maybe a handful of women at like NASCC on the show floor, and now I would say we're everywhere, but we're everywhere.
Yeah.
So let's maybe go back because I'm going to go back to the talking points so they keep me reined in here. You had a little bit about how did you get here, but how did you find yourself in this career path? What did you go to college for?
I originally went to college to be an architect, which I have heard on more than one occasion from other detailers. And I was going through my gen eds and decided that the long term of becoming an architect was like a lot of years. And as much as I love learning things, I wasn't like super keen on going to school for that many years and paying that much to do it. And so then I was looking around for something similar and found drafting courses. So I started taking those. And while I didn't love AutoCAD, I did have one semester of SDS and it just struck a chord for me. And I was like, this is something I find super interesting. And it just happened that my employer, or who I ended up working with, had posted a job like the semester that I was graduating with SDS. And I was like, I'll give it a shot and apply. And then it just stuck. And that's where I've been ever since.
Awesome. So where did you go to school that was teaching SDS2?
MSU Billings.
Okay.
It was at the time, COT, now it's called the City College, and they actually have gotten rid of the drafting program, which is a huge bummer.
Oh, no. That is a huge bummer. I know that we're putting a concerted effort into getting back into more schools, and we work with some different colleges now, GHC, in Atlanta, they actually started a BIM management program, and so we offered the software to them, so they teach SDS2, and that's a 4-year program for BIM management. So they do a lot with all the different types of BIM models, teaching students about that, which I think is something that maybe was, from your basic drafting course was missed for a while, right? It's just, hey, 2D AutoCAD, I'm drawing stuff, and that's not really how people work anymore.
Mm-mm. I agree. It's definitely, at least from my perspective, feels like it's more of a 3D application, less of the 2D application.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. So we know how you got here. We know how you got to detailing. What is it about SDS2 that caught your eye that you thought was like, hey, this is what's interesting about detailing for me? And because you've kind of become, I would say, known just through the one presentation you gave at Summit, I think you started to make your name for yourself here in the SDS2 community. So what is it about the product that you love, that drives you, that makes your job fun during the day?
It's different. So I'm not sure why I struggled so much with AutoCAD, but it was very just like, I don't know, repetitive and bland. And I feel like with SDS, you have so many ways of doing so many different things. And so it's a constant, you're constantly learning. And if you talk to someone who has 25 years experience, pit it against someone who's under 10 years experience, they have completely different ways of doing the same thing, and they both work. And so I think that's what I love about the program itself, is that you're constantly learning and evolving, and you guys with SDS are constantly developing new ways to do things. You're talking to the people using the program all the time and keeping track of what updates need to be made or things to make our life easier. And so I feel like it's just a constant evolution, and I like not being stagnant, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, Women in Construction Month. I'm going to make sure I stay on topic because I could go every which direction. But is there a prominent female or a role model, or who inspires you just as a woman working in this construction field? Is there someone you look up to, or maybe it's not even a woman? I don't know.
Well, not so much in the construction field, but my oldest sister, she is like my idol in all walks of life because we lived in this tiny podunk town. Like my graduating class had 27 people, and
me too.
Mine was like, mine was the biggest out of like the last 50 years or something. And so she went from a small community where she had started working at the hospital, just it's the front desk receptionist, to ending up in Spokane being like the president of the medical billing department and having hundreds of people underneath her. And she didn't go through the traditional route of like going to college and doing that. She just learned as she went and was confident in her abilities, and people recognized that and were like, I'm gonna put you in charge. And so I think she's so smart in so many aspects of life. So she's a huge role model for me.
Awesome. From what I hear from that, I think some of the things I hear from you are important, is like hard work, dedication to the job. And how do you apply those sorts of things in your role as a modeler and a detailer?
The dedication to learning. Like I said before, the software is constantly evolving. And so I want to know how it works. And I'm not always satisfied, which could be kind of irritating if you work with me, and I ever apologize for that. I don't take things kind of at face value. So if it's like, do this, I want to know why I'm doing it, because if I know why I'm doing it and how it helps people down the line from me, like people in the shop or even the design team checking what I've done, I want to know that so that I can better do my job. So I'm really dedicated to learning the whole process of all aspects of what I do and how it affects everybody else around me and how their jobs are performed.
Outstanding. So what's a regular day look like for you? Especially, so you're working on the cloud, you're detailing with you're in Montana, the majority of the KMA team is in Iowa and other places because they have quite a few remote people on their team.
Yes.
What does your day look like as a detailer, as a modeler? What are you doing?
So I usually get on, and the times vary depending on my life schedule. And because Brian, my direct manager, is in Iowa, he's an hour ahead of me. So I can get on early in the morning and I touch base with him if I have to. I check my emails to make sure if there's anything pending. And then there's like a master schedule that I'll jump into and check to see. But then I kind of just hit the ground running and I get in whatever job I'm needed. And right now I'm mostly doing modeling and e-plans, but this last week I have taken over detailing on one of my jobs, which is kind of fun to get back into detailing since I've been doing a lot of modeling. So that's pretty much it. I touched base with the boss man and then hit the ground running.
So working on the cloud enables you to be remote, not have to move somewhere. Is there anything special you guys have to do to make sure you're managing projects between team members that are remote in different places?
Just communicating, really. So since I haven't been detailing a lot, whichever detailer, and it's typically been the same one, or just happens to be the same one recently, she'll jump on and be like, hey, I have a question here and here. And so we'll go back and forth over our chat, or Brian will leave notes in the model for me if he finds something, or I'll leave notes in the session for somebody to look at. So it's just trying to communicate the best we can via all of the avenues we have, whether it's email or Sparks or Bluebeam, or I'll get on the phone and we'll call people if we have to. So communicating in that way.
Okay. So when you say leave notes in the session, what does that mean exactly?
So we use Bluebeam, and you can, like, if there's an issue in design and I haven't, something's not working, a connection's not working, I'll cloud it and pull a note off and be like, this is the issue. And I'll message Brian and be like, hey, got a question, need to know. So when he has time, he'll jump in the session and see what I've marked up, and it'll show the details or what have you, so that he can see what I'm seeing. And that way we can coordinate better that way. Or he can jump on and watch my screen and I can walk him through whatever issue I have.
Okay, perfect. What do you like most about your job? And I think we've gotten some of that, but like maybe it's your job within the steel industry.
That's kind of tough. I really like that every job's a little bit different, and that it takes the monotony out of doing my job when you get to put eyes on something fresh. So whether it's you have a different engineering firm that's designed the connections, or it's like a huge architectural piece, and so you have to make it super beautiful because that's the main feature. There's always a different aspect that you have to get into and like really focus on it. So it makes your brain work constantly.
Yeah.
It's never the same thing repetitively, or very rarely is it repetitive.
I'll say I think one of the things I like the most about the steel industry is the people.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I'm not doing detailing work, and I'm not getting my hands on SDS2 nearly as much as I'd like to anymore, but the people are so great. And maybe you can share this experience with me too, coming from a small town, right? Like it feels like the people and I feel like I've got friends from across the country now that feel like people I've grown up with and just always known. Like it's just a comfortable place to be for me.
I would tend to agree with that. Going to the summit last year and meeting so many users, and every single person I talked to was so willing to share. Like, we're competitors realistically, but not one person snubbed me. If I had a question about how they did something or what works best for them doing whatever situation, even inter-office communication, every single person was so willing to talk to me about it. And it was great. It was very like refreshing and like pretty homey. You're right, like small town feel.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really great about our user base and our customer base, and the summit, right? That's a great place to meet people and share ideas and help each other get better, which is not something you necessarily find among competitors.
Right.
And is important for the growth of the software, for the growth of our user base as far as their knowledge goes. Like the fact that we have so many different customers willing to get up and speak to each other about how they've maybe solved this problem, or give us an idea on like how did this project go, and show some of the things that are done with the software that, hey, I didn't realize you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we got great feedback on your presentation, which I believe was stair and rails, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Everybody wants to know more about stair and rails.
Well, every building has stairs and rails.
I'm giving up on my agenda for a minute here because I want to talk about stair and rails. What would be the first tip of someone that's just picking up SDS2 and they've got a building? There's obviously stair and rails because it's more than one story. So what would be your first tip on how to go about figuring out how to do this in the most efficient way?
I hate to say it because I don't want to call out the architects, but don't always trust the math. I feel like more often than not, the design team tends to be a could it be done, not if it should be done kind of thought process. So they kind of go about it in a way that's not wholly practical. It might look really nice and like the numbers might like seem to be rounded well, but when you actually lay a stair out, it doesn't always match. And sometimes you have to take a tread or riser away to get it to fit where it needs to be in the actual structure. So I would say don't always trust math. Like don't get hung up on they want 11 treads. Sometimes it's 10 treads and they messed up on their math. As long as your structure is where it needs to be for whatever reason, you can usually make the stairs fit.
Oh, so how do you go about figuring out that the math isn't quite right? Like when does it look wrong to you that you have to say, wait a minute, no, I need to take a tread out or I need to make an adjustment here?
Usually if one of the standards can't be upheld. So you have like your rail standards, your walkway can't be more narrow than your tread or your landings, or sorry, what have you. Finding out that like you're busting a dimension somewhere, then you're like, we can't do that. This is not up to code is usually where I find it out, hopefully before I get the rails in, because then that's a whole process. But usually around that point when you're like in a doorway or in some kind of walking surface, or your tread 6 inches above the actual, or your riser 6 inches above the landing. So that's usually.
Okay, so that's the first time that like the alarm goes off, like, wait a minute, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So in your time coming into the detailing world as a female, have you encountered difficulties, or have you found that the detailing trade and the steel industry is generally more accepting of females than maybe people like to think?
Honestly, I have been pretty well accepted. I did run into a GC who was kind of part of the old boys club, and he kept trying to go around me because he didn't like the way that I had provided E-plans, elevation views for these wing girts. It was correct. I didn't miss anything. He just didn't have the numbers labeled perfectly the way he wanted it. And he was an old boy and wanted it his way. And so that one was a bit tricky, but after like he tried to go around me to my boss a few times, my boss just kept screening calls and sending it back to me after I had actually like talked to him and like explained, then that went a lot better. So aside from that one situation, I feel like most of the men are willing and accepting of having females in the industry.
Yeah. In my experience, I think, and again, I started like 2005, so it's been a while, but in my experience, if you know what you're talking about and you can prove that you're knowledgeable and you can hold up a conversation and it's not all fluff, generally it's not a problem. It's more about what you know than who you are or what your gender is, to me. That's the way I've seen it.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And I also think they take a lot of stock in admitting if you've messed up or don't understand something. Like no one's perfect. And if you're trying to blow smoke up their butts, then they'll be like, you don't really know. But if you're like, hold on, this terminology that you're using is throwing me off. That's not what I'm used to. Can you clarify? Then I feel like they give you more respect because they're like, okay, she's willing to learn and she wants to know. So let's teach her.
Yeah. I would 100% agree with that. And I came out of school with no detailing knowledge. Didn't know what a steel angle was when I started, right?
Right.
And so I would go out, I would do my own sales demos. And I still remember the day somebody asked me, like, hey, can you put in a curved lintel in SDS2? Like a curved angle lintel I'm like, what's a lintel? I like, okay, pretty sure you can. I'm pretty sure that the problem is me, that I don't know everything here. So how about we do this? Draw out what you want me to do and we'll find out. And so we sat there and I had him draw out. I said, okay, now I get it. It's an L, it's an angle. And you're explaining to me, okay, it's holding up bricks. Like, this is how remedial I was with it. And we talked through it, how it's fabricated, how it's going to get connected to the beam, and we put it in together in the middle of a demo. And what I learned through that is that people in the industry are so willing to teach you if you're genuine about wanting to know and wanting to learn more and better yourself there, that I've learned so much from our customers in the middle of demos, outside of demos. Like, it is a great industry that is willing to teach each other, teach you how to do it. And when you're open and genuine about wanting to be better and wanting to know more, it's very accepting.
Agreed. Do you think it's because it's not a huge industry? Like, how hard it is to come by solid welders and solid construction workers. Like, I feel like maybe because how sparse it is, like important it is why they're so willing to teach everybody.
Yeah, and I think it's because I think our customers, everyone takes pride in their work and what they do. And to share that knowledge, maybe that comes too from being typically an apprentice-based type of industry, where a lot of times you have an apprentice and someone that you're going to teach, because it doesn't always come out of a traditional schooling environment.
Right, I guess I didn't think of that.
Like, that could be it too, but it time and again, I've been taught by our customers, and everything from what picket spacing is supposed to be, because it's the code, because I came out of school with an advertising degree. I have no business running SDS2, but at the same time, I love it. Like, there's no other product that I've ever had my hands on, I should say, that you can do so much with. And as a person that likes to build things anyway, it was a perfect fit for me that kept me attracted to the industry, and believing in how we can help our customers, help you guys get your job done in a better and more efficient fashion.
Right.
So I'll stay on track because everyone wants me to stay on track.
Side tangents are so much fun.
I know there's so much, and I can go in so many directions. Do you have any other stories? You shared one already, but are there other stories about overcoming a barrier that you've had in construction?
Probably terminology. The first time I got released onto the shop, guys, or released into the shop world,
right?
Learning real life applicable terms that the guys in the shop building the things versus the terminology that I was learning in the office behind the computer. That was a communication barrier that I had to figure out with my last shop foreman, because he was like, I need you to pull a dim from the thing to the thing. And I was like, hold up. Those don't make sense to me. My brain does not compute what you're saying. And I had done a big radius stair for a hospital in Rapid City. And so they were trying to build this huge radius stair, and it was the first, I think it was the first radius stair that I did. And he was like, just get in the shop. And I was like, okay. And so I got sent to the shop with my laptop, and he had huge drawings. And I was not aware that they printed shop drawings at 36 by 48, or I thought they just, I don't know, looked at it on a computer. Right. No, they have hard paper. And so he could scratch on the paper with his pencil, like this from here to here, and then he'd show me on the actual stair. And I was like, oh, okay. So then we were able to communicate when he could physically show me what it was. So communication and terminology.
I'll say, what was the terminology he was using that didn't register with what I'm assuming probably is what is called an SDS2? Maybe that's wrong, but
honestly, I can't even remember now. But it was like, because it was on a curve, then your pans are kind of like a triangle versus just a square pan. So he was trying to get the two sides lined up and needed dimensions. And I can't even remember, but it was very confusing to not be able to physically see what. Sorry, the kids just got home from school. to not be able to actually like see what he was talking about, like whereas two detailers can share screens and point out what's going on. Shop guys don't always have that. So when they're trying to communicate what they need from you, it's much harder remotely.
Right. Okay. I remember one of the things that confused me was chain dimensions, running dimensions, and extension dimensions. They're all basically the same thing. I think it was a couple years before I learned that, oh, they're all talking about the same thing, and it might just differ on where you're at in the country and what terminology they use.
I just recently learned that the guys at KMA call like the main structure red iron. That was new for me. I was like, red iron? And he's like, yeah. And explained it. And I was like, oh, okay. I just called it structure, like main structure.
Why is it red iron?
I guess he didn't clarify that. I'm assuming like the color maybe, because it's red, like doesn't it come out with a red oxide finish sometimes? Like that's beyond me. I haven't been let out of my box enough.
Well, I was thinking, is it because they used SDS2 like 6.3 when everything was red in there or not?
Oh, maybe. I mean, I think Brian has like 25 years or some experience, so there's a chance that's it.
Oh gosh. So how about you tell me a little bit about maybe one of your biggest successes on a project or just an achievement in life? Let's hear about it.
I think I'd have to say probably being asked to speak at the summit was huge for me, because like I said, I don't get let out of the office often. And so being able to be seen as someone who had value in the things that they knew and like was asked to share that with other people. And then being done speaking, even though I was like, felt like I lost my train of thought a ton of times because, we're not public speakers. We're usually secluded to our desks. Like, you know what I mean? It's a whole different ballgame. So having people say that I did a good job and like come up and do follow-up questions and actually like I had value to provide to people in the industry. And that was huge for me because I thought I was just valuable to my company. I didn't realize that it was like more than that.
Oh boy.
So that was pretty big.
I like what's running through my head, and I probably shouldn't even say it, but I'm going to say it, is like the Dirty Dancing line. Nobody keeps Baily in a corner.
No joke. Try me. They've let me out. Now watch out.
Yeah, watch out. Exactly. No, and you know what? That's what we need more of, is more women showing up with their expertise and sharing it in the industry, sharing it at Summit, teaching others what they know and building the next generation, right?
Right.
And, I just heard your kids come in. I have kids too. I think one of the things that I've learned too through this industry is the strength and knowledge. And how do you share that or act as a role model to your kids?
They probably are so annoyed that every time I drive anywhere and see something, I'm like, I do that for a living, or I've done that building. But I really try to instill a like solid work ethic and pride in the work that you do. And so by me constantly pointing out things that I have a knowledge of that Joe Schmo on the street doesn't typically know about, because it's kind of specialized, I guess is the way of saying it. Trying to show them like there's other avenues to life than like going to college and becoming a doctor or a lawyer, because that's the stereotype. You always push your kids to do that. Like that's my husband's was a mechanic, then a miner, then he did firefighting on the side. He is a very like with his hands kind of man.
Mm-hmm.
And I work in the construction industry also, so I've never pushed the typical go to college and do college stuff, be a lawyer or a therapist. Like I'm like, if you want to work with your hands, go to a trade school, go be an apprentice, learn those things, do something you're proud of doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so me showing them the things that I've done with work is kind of my way of showing that I've pride in what I'm doing and I'm happy where I'm at.
Oh yeah.
In a roundabout way, if that makes sense. That answers the question.
It does. And do you walk in a building and immediately look up and like, look at that? I would say
Yep.
in our new office, it's a new building, so we're looking up, and it was one that KMA actually did.
Oh, really?
So we're looking up and like, Brian, everything was fine. It looks good. But there's places that we'll go to. Maybe we're at NASCC or we're at Summit or somewhere else, and you'll look up at the ceiling and you're like, oh, that's a field cut. Somebody had to field fit that. What happened there? Like,
do you ever not trust buildings? Like the hotel at last year's Summit, I was like, man, I hope they did this right. Because I was on like the 17th or 18th floor, and I was like,
when I very first started, I came straight out of college, didn't know anything. I got a crash course for a week in like, what is steel? It's wide flanges. Don't you dare say an I-beam. And if anyone tries to tell you that there's a beam stretcher, there's not, and there's not sky hooks either. And like very much like what all the shapes are, what all the connection types are. This is what they're used for. This is why they're used. These are the things that detailers have to think about.
mm-hmm.
Then I got put straight into a training class the very next week. So just learned steel. Now I'm doing SDS2. I had nightmares every night that I had to build a roller coaster in SDS2 and I couldn't get the connections to work. And I was showing up there to go look at it and they're like, oh, you get to ride it. I'm like, connections don't work. Like, we can't do this.
I think that is a thing that plagues everybody in the industry. Mm-hmm. And I like to say that my education, as far as like after I graduated and got into the program and was like doing it in real life, was trial by fire. It was like, this is what we need done. They needed it yesterday. Let's go. And so I was like, cool. And I think that's why I have kind of become the person that I am, where I'm like, I want to know everything, because that way, if I get put in a situation where it's like, we need this now, I know the best way to do it. Or if I'm training someone and they have questions, I can answer all of their questions to the best of my ability. So yeah, I feel like this industry does the nightmares a lot, because it's like, did I forget that? Or did I miss something completely here? And yeah. And then of course, trial by fire, there's a lot of pressure to learn and to learn fast.
That's why we have checkers.
Yeah, for real.
Like if there's an unsung hero, it might be checkers. And
I cannot give praise enough to the people who check, because they have so much knowledge of all the standards that I've learned a ton from the people checking my jobs. They've caught things that I wasn't even aware of was a thing at points in my career.
Oh yeah. One of the things, like, because SDS2 will catch a lot, right? And when I first started, this is another time I was doing a demo, and I was trying to show how the erectability checks happen with SDS2. And if you increase the load, it's going to increase rows of bolts, and it's going to drop your clip angle longer, right? Well, then one time it just turned it into a shear tab. I'm like, what is going on?
Why?
This is a clip angle. What's happening? And I couldn't answer it in the demo. I had to go back. I had to have somebody here teach me. I think it was James Schwartz. So I was like, what is going on here? And he's like, oh, it's simple. You've got a moment in there, and there's the flange plates of the moment, right? Going into a web. And the clip angle, the bolts were going to interfere with those plates. I didn't know enough about steel at the time to know that's why. Like the system's doing what it's supposed to.
Right.
I'm just the user that doesn't know.
Yep. And so every time it gives you like a wonky connection, you're like, okay, there's got to be a reason why it's doing what it is doing. And again, me needing to know everything, I have to go dig and find. I don't know. probably every guy in support knows who I am, because I'm constantly like, I don't understand what's happening. Explain to me. Or something's going on weird here. Let's figure it out. Like, because I want to know.
Yes. Do you think that's a trait of detailers, like the personalities that are drawn to being a detailer too, that they're just curious and need to know that information?
I would say the majority of them, yes.
Yeah.
I've run into a couple who are just like, it's fine. Like, and I'm like, but why is it fine? Like, and then they don't question it. And that like bothers me to my core. I'm like, no, I need to know the answer. But I think that is probably an inherent trait of people in the industry.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I feel like almost everyone I've come across is like, they're just naturally curious. They're trying to figure out why. They will go figure out how to do things themselves, or they're the people that tinker with different things and figure out how to make something better.
Yep.
Which is kind of cool, just to know that you're like, those are your peers, right?
My husband actually called us a bunch of nerds. Because I was like, called him after the first day of the summit, and I was like, oh my gosh, babe, this is amazing. And I was like explaining like all the people I've talked to and how many things I've already learned. He's like, oh, you found your nerds. And I was like, yes, I did. I found my type. I found my group of people.
That's awesome. Oh gosh. Okay. I'm going to make sure I get back to my list of things and make sure we talk about. I don't have a person here wrangling me.
You're doing a really good job.
I'm trying to stay on task. So do you have any tips for women in the industry?
Don't be intimidated by the men folk. I really hate like pitting, like making it out like the men are the bad guys, because they're really not. Like I said, there's very few out there that are still of the old boys club mentality. But like, I know me coming into the industry as I think I was 19, I don't know, math, as a young woman, and having to have conversations with all of these men who have had years and years of experience, and just sitting and listening to them talk, it was like way above my head. So I was very intimidated for a lot of years until I started feeling comfortable and confident in like what I knew. I would say try not to be intimidated by them. Like we said, a lot of them are super willing to teach us and want to teach. So just don't be scared to ask. Don't be afraid to ask the questions.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think being genuine about what you know and what you don't know, and just being honest, like, I don't know that. Help me learn, help me understand how to do that so I can do better the next time. Goes a long way. And the more knowledge you gain, because I feel like from start to now, right? Like, think about how much you've transformed as a person and in the knowledge that you have. And a lot of it, even it's Women in Construction Month, like a lot of it isn't about being a woman in this industry as much as it is about being an expert in your domain, right?
Yes. And as much as I like don't want to take away from the women in industry, because it is not a super typical thing. Like there are women out there that do it, but more often than not, it's a man that fills the position. So it's, don't be afraid of the men folk just because there's so many of them out there.
Right. I agree. And you're right. It's, you don't want to take away from one or the other, right? But it's to me, it isn't about gender so much as it is about being good at your job and having pride in your work and working hard and building the relationships with your coworkers, whoever they may be, right?
Right. I like that. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And I would have to say is that I feel like any woman in this industry that's been a long time in this industry tends to be strong-minded, and has been had to like, maybe they know their stuff.
Yep.
And they've had to stand up and say, I know my stuff, and prove that they know their stuff.
Yeah, you definitely have to prove your worth to some people, and not be afraid or intimidated into not speaking up.
Right.
And that's not always as easy set or as easy to do as it is to say, I guess is the way to say that. Sometimes it's very hard to be like, no, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Stop trying to talk over me, I guess.
That being said, wouldn't trade. There isn't anywhere else I'd rather be
Agreed.
than in this industry and in this company and with the customers that we have, trying to build better products for you guys to do a better job as detailers and fabricators out there.
I agree. The industry's pretty great.
It absolutely is. It's so much fun. So I think we've been going for about 40 minutes. So we can get to the point where we're wrapping up, especially if you've got people getting home, and probably Brian isn't going to want me to take you away from work too long anyway. So last question is, where do you want to go from here?
Oh, that's tricky. I don't think I could ever see myself not being active in a model. Like, I don't want to cap myself at just being a modeler. I would love to be able to, I've in the past managed projects, fine, but maybe one day having my own company or being part owner in a company and being able to really share my experience with other people and see how things would run if I was running them. You know what I mean? Like, everyone always has their perspectives and the way that they like to see things. And me being the person that I am, I always, not that there's anything wrong with the way things are being done, but it's all about innovation and growing and learning new things and trying to optimize your workflow. And so I always have ideas, and David can contest to this. I have notebooks filled with things, ideas, just random snippets, stuff that I want to follow up on, ideas of my own on like how I would operate if I ever went there. And not saying that I am going to in the next 5 years, but like maybe one day I'll have my own company. I don't know. Sky's the limits. But I always want to do something in detailing.
Awesome. So actually, I'm going to backtrack. We're not done yet because I heard someone say something interesting today, and I want your take on it. That SDS2 is a detailing software, but it's also, what they call it? It was a mode of transportation for the data to get to the shop.
I would have to agree. Because the more, and I'm a little out of my element here because I haven't spent a lot of time with the shop guys, but there's so many ways of exporting the information to equipment that runs in the shop, whether it's like a CNC line or I can't remember the name, but the machine that cuts the holes in the wide flange beams and columns. Like, there's so much equipment out there that SDS is compatible with that I feel like that's a great way of explaining it.
Yeah, it just made me stop for a second and go, you're right. I've never really thought about it in those terms. It's like, oh yeah, you're completely right. I mean, I've thought about it in terms of like, hey, this is a 3D, it's a database of information that you have a 3D interface to, right? A beam is a beam. It can be flat on paper or it could be in the model. The model is the way to interact with that information, right? I didn't think about it so much as a mode of transportation for how that information that you're really getting from maybe the architect's drawings or the engineer's drawings, that's a mode of transportation from that 2D drawing or maybe their design model all the way out to the shop.
It does make a lot of sense, and you gotta think like how much easier it makes life for the shop guys. From having to take the chalk and the tape and marking out every single cut to being able to run it through a line and just doing, I mean, they still are doing a lot, don't get me wrong, but I feel like us being able to get that information in a condensed form, that it makes their jobs faster, makes fabrication faster, makes just everything move faster. Right. Because I was actually listening to another construction podcast and they were talking about detailing, and they said that the reason why our job is always rushed and is so stressed is because they can't do anything without us. And I was like, that's a very valid point. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we are, aside from concrete, like, we're the next step. They can't put up walls or put in HVAC or run electrical or do anything until they have what we give them.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I think for as little people, like, as few people who know, like, what steel detailing is, like, we're
Mm-hmm.
pivotal to construction for steel buildings. Like, we're kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
I
love
myself
it.
on the back there.
You're right. You are kind of a big deal, Baily.
Thanks. You too.
Ah, thanks. So, are you going to present again at Summit?
I mean, there hasn't been an official invitation, but I'm definitely willing, and it sounds like Brian wants me there. So
Awesome. I'm sure there will be. We, when is it? Say we just haven't started planning yet, but I'm sure there will be.
well, you guys are rolling out a new version of the software. You're a little bit
Mm-hmm.
busy.
Yes, we got a little bit going. As soon as that happens, and as soon as any SEC happens, then the planning starts kicking in for Summit, and that'll be in Omaha this year.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice because it's just down the road from us in Lincoln. And I'm hoping maybe we can get time to get people maybe to come down to our office, check things out here. We'll see how it works out though.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Get a tour of the home base.
Mm-hmm. And I know I want to do a case study with Brian about how they did the office here because they, it was modeled on the cloud and sent over to them, detailed by some of their guys, and then fabricated by I think Apollo here in town. So like it's a great case study for how how SDS2 cloud and SDS2 detailing all work together and people working with remote teams.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice that that's our home now, right?
Yeah. But like our company made this possible. Without us, this building would not be here.
And the stairs. The stairs in this one.
Are they amazing?
They're pretty nice. Like it's a 1, 2, there's I think 2 switchbacks, so it kind of goes up, up, up. And the treads are all wood that's kind of bolted on to they were pans when we were walking up them doing the walkthroughs as we were going through the construction site. But yeah, now they've got all kinds of nice architectural wood. They're very pretty.
Very pretty. That's the nerdy side of us where we're like, that wood and steel looks real nice.
Oh, but on the outside, there's a couple of handrails that somebody didn't grind down the welds very good.
Oh no.
I've heard about that from a couple people here. All of us steel nerds in here are picking apart everything that didn't get finished up just right. But it's fun. It's a nice spot.
I bet. I'm excited. I hope we can see it. That'd be cool.
Yeah, and we've got a nice training room now. Actually, we have a training class here this week. The first one we've had in person for quite a while, since COVID almost. So
since the thing we do not speak of.
Right. Oh, well, I suppose I should probably get us to wrapping it up now. So how do people connect with you if they want to learn more about what Baily knows? How do they get a hold of you?
I'm on LinkedIn. Just search
right.
for Baily Frick. My face is there. You'll see me.
Perfect. All right, Baily. Well, I want to thank you again for your time and for teaching me about huckleberry vodka.
Oh, yes. You'll enjoy it.
This will be something I have to try.
Don't forget the American honey, too, the whiskey.
Oh, yes. American honey. And thank you for sharing and being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. And I'll look forward to seeing you here in a few months at Summit.
Yeah. I look forward to being there. You have a good week.
All right. You too. Take care, Baily.
Bye.
Bye.